Titanfall 2 is a difficult game to talk about, not because it's confusing, nor because it's bad. It's because it's so uncomplicatedly good. It's the 1999 Mummy, or first Pirates of the Caribbean of video games. Not complicated or flashy, just 100% quality from start to end. The game was directed by Steve Fukuda, developed by Respawn Entertainment, and published by EA. Unlike some of the games previously discussed, it is not in any way subversive or experimental. What it is, though, is an instant recommendation. Titanfall 2 is a short game. How Long to Beat rates the playtime at 6 hours for the campaign, but it took me just 4.5 hours to complete the game on hard. With a Metacritic score of 89 and a user score of 8.6, it is fair to say that it's a well-liked game. I'd even go as far as to say it is somewhat of a platonic ideal for single-player FPS campaigns. The story is simple. You play as Cooper, who dream of one day becoming a pilot, the elite commandos who steer mech suits. Cooper is currently a rifleman in the Frontier Militia, which is engaged in a war against the Interstellar Manufacturing Corporation. Cooper is deployed on the planet Typhon, where his mentor promptly dies. Cooper inherits his Titan, BT, is tasked with completing the mission his mentor was on, and starts a rivalry with the mercenary group Apex Predators, who killed BT's last pilot. After that, the game is a series of varied and interesting levels, crescendoing in us finding out that the IMC has a space nuke, which they are aiming to fire at the malicious capital planet of Harmony. Now it is up to Cooper and BT to stop the space nuke and kill the leader of Apex. The story is dead simple, but don't take that to mean it's bad or simplistic. Titanfall 2 is an incredible adaptation of the experience of watching a sci-fi action movie to the medium of video games. Cooper kills a ton more bad guys than a movie version of him would, and his adventure is far longer, but the pacing and story beats feel just like they should in a great action movie. BT and Cooper have great chemistry. The voice acting from Glenn Steinbaum and Matt Mercer is stellar.
This was supposed to be a shortcut, BT.
Perhaps Lastimosa was right. No plan survives first contact.
And they feel like a natural action movie duo. The larger world feels Star Wars inspired, with its lived-in spaces and rebellious militia fighting the Imperious Corporation. But it also has that 40k sense of super hugeness sometimes. I didn't look much into the lore, because just like me, the game is never very interested in it. It wants to tell an engaging action story, and to set up the journey Cooper and BT go on, a war is needed. But it is not needed to explain how tariff policy and diplomatic snubs preceded all-out war. It also isn't worth lingering too long on the story. Again, not because it's bad, because it's neither the main focus nor the main draw of Titanfall 2, and I don't want to spoil it here for you. I want you to play this game for yourself. What's so great about the gameplay of Titanfall 2 is that it is clearly designed as a multiplayer shooter first. As much as I like games like Bioshock and Deathloop, the design of those games forego any in-depth shooting mechanics and use RPG and ImSim design cues respectively to spice up their FPS framework. Titanfall 2, though, is an FPS first, and while it doesn't have as complicated shooting mechanics as Tarkov or CS2, it features in-depth movement mechanics and an unusually big and varied arsenal for the player to use, making it far more interesting than most single-player only FPSs. Titanfall 2's weapons are very accurate and have very controllable recoil. Normally, I write that kind of shooting mechanics off as uninteresting and standard, but in the context of the movement mechanics, it is clear that Respawn made a conscious choice with their guns. Spread and spray patterns work well in games like Counter-Strike, where the focus is on being tactical and where the game wants the player to stand still while shooting. Titanfall 2 wants the player to keep moving at all time, and if it had CS-like shooting mechanics, you wouldn't be able to hit the broadside of a sci-fi aircraft carrier while wall running. The real joy in Titanfall 2's shooting is the wide variety of weapons you have access to. Want a standard AR? Check. Want an energy LMG? Check. Want a triple-barreled shotgun pistol? Also check. In total, there are 23 weapons, which have truly different feels, use cases, and looks. And that's just Cooper's arsenal. BT has access to a further 24 weapons if you count mains, ordnances, and cores. In short, Titanfall has incredible variety in a way that most FPS campaigns could only dream of. Speaking of variety, one of the ways Titanfall mixes up its gameplay is by featuring Titan sections, where you pilot BT and fight both infantry and other Titans. Titan gameplay has a completely different feel to infantry gameplay, and while the Titan doesn't have access to the movement mechanics the pilot does, it manages to be interesting by having a limited number of dashes and by having out their weapons, like the Vortex Shield, which allows you to stop enemy fire and hurl it back at them. The Titan sections not only serve the repetition breaking function which turret sections traditionally serve in FPS campaigns, it also allows for boss fights without having to have a super tanky special infantry guy to fight. The boss fights are against different Titans with different abilities each time, and while they're not at FromSoft levels of brilliance, they are above average boss fights in my book. I often talk about level design when discussing FPSs, as they live and die on their level design. Titanfall's level design is truly top notch. Beautiful levels filled with interesting cover and structures to fight in and around, and always accommodating the movement mechanics. The game is also incredibly good at introducing gimmicks to level design. On the assembly line, you have to work with moving platforms and avoid being crushed while in a firefight. On the comm array, you have to avoid falling to your death while battling the IMC. And in the standout level of the game, the research facility, there's a Dishonored 2 style level gimmick, which I will not spoil for those who have not played the game. In short, the game is impeccably designed. Titanfall 2 is setting the bar for what a single player FPS campaign should be. It is varied and interesting, well executed, and overall just feels incredibly solid. You can tell the polish and QA that went into making this. There's a lot more one could do in terms of story and themes, but the game is not worse off for keeping it simple. It is the Raiders of the Lost Ark of video games, a simple action adventure and the highest level of quality. What else is there to say? Take my advice and play the game instead of listening to me failing to accurately describe its many successes.